What sounds like a better movie idea to you guys? Especially since nowadays we can probably have AI deepfakes make live action remakes of animated shows. But Invincible, a live action remake, a live action Invincible with Steven Seagal as Thrag. Or remember like the Freddy vs. Jason type movies? What if you had like Steven Seagal versus Jurassic Park? Or like, you know, like the Musashi arc and Baki the Grappler? Like what if the next chapter or arc in the manga of Baki the Grappler is Steven Seagal versus Yujiro Hanma and the rest of the people? Or heck, what if like the next Mortal Kombat movie in like 2028 is like Steven Seagal is the main character? Like Mortal Kombat 2028, fatality awaits. I don't know. Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone, in both the analog and digital world. Welcome and good evening, you wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8. We're reading The Tragedy of X, Ellery Queen, Act 3, Scene 6. A suite in the Hotel Grant, Saturday, October 10, 4:05 a.m. Sergeant Duffy's preposterous back was pressed against the panels of the door. I feel like I need to sneeze. Leading into Cherry Brown's suite. And he was talking guardedly to a worried-looking man of girth when Inspector Thum, District Attorney Bruno, and their men strode down the corridor of the 12th floor and in the Hotel Grant. Duffy introduced the worried-looking man as the hotel detective, and the hotel detective looked even more worried at the glint in Thum's eye. "Anything?" asked Thum in an ominous voice. "Quiet as mice," mumbled the hotel detective. "Quiet as mice. Won't be any trouble now, will there, Inspector?" "Not a peep out of them," said the sergeant. "I guess they must have gone to bed." The hotel man immediately assumed a shocked expression. "We don't allow that sort of thing." Thum growled. "Any other exit from this apartment?" "That door." Duffy wielded his beefy arm. "And, course, there's the fire escape, but that's covered from downstairs. Got a man on the roof, too, just in case." "Scarcely necessary, it seems to me," objected Bruno. He seemed uneasy. "They won't try to get away." "Well, you never can tell," said the inspector dryly. "All set, boys?" He glanced up and down the corridor. There was no one about except his own men and hotel detective. Two men had strolled over to the adjoining door without further preliminary. Thum rapped on the panels of the door. There was no sound from the interior of the suite. Thum set his ear against the door, listened for a moment, then knocked thunderously. The hotel detective opened his mouth to protest, closed again, and began to patrol the carpeting nervously. There was a long delay, but this time a murmur of noise made itself faintly audible to the inspector's ears. He smiled grimly and waited. Then the click of an electric switch somewhere in the interior, a whispering shuffle, and the tumbling sounds of a bolt being withdrawn. Thum glanced warningly at his men. The door opened a scant 2 inches. "Who is it? What do you want?" It was Cherry Brown's voice, a nervous voice with uncertain accents. Thum wedged his large shoe into the crack of the door, prying it open. He placed his ham-like hand against the panels, pushed. The door gave grudgingly. In the light of the room, a very beautiful and a very apprehensive Cherry stood, wrapped in lacy silken negligee? Is that like a type of lingerie? Her tiny bare feet thrust into satin mules. She uttered the ghostliest gasp at the sight of Thum's face, retreating instinctively. "Why, it's Inspector Thum," she said in a weak voice, as if Thum's substantial presence were not self-evident. "What's the trouble?" No trouble at all," said Thum heartily, but his eyes were roving. He was standing in the sitting room of the actress's suite. It was in some disarray. On the sideboard, an empty gin bottle and an almost empty bottle of whiskey, a litter of half-smoked cigarette butts, a woman's pearl-beaded evening bag on the table, unwashed glasses, an overturned chair, Her eyes went from the inspector's face to the doorway. They widened at the sight of Bruno and the silent men in the corridor outside. The door leading into the bedroom was closed. Thum smiled. "Let's go, DA. You men stay outside." And the district attorney walked into the room, shutting the corridor door behind him. Some of the woman's natural self-possession returned, color came back into her cheeks, and one hand strayed to her hair. "Well," she said, "this is a fine time to disturb a lady. What's the idea, Inspector?" "Can it, sister," said Thum pleasantly. "You alone?" "What's that to you?" I said. "Are you alone?" "It's none of your rotten business," grinning while Bruno leaned against the wall. Thum crossed the room to the other door. The actress uttered a little cry of dismay and ran after him, intercepting him, placing her back against the bedroom door. She was angry. Her luminous Spanish eyes flashed. "You've got a sweet nerve," she cried. "Where's your warrant? You can't—" Thum placed his large hand on her shoulder, brushed her from the door. It opened in his face, and Pollux stepped out, blinking in the light. All right," said Pollux in a cracked voice. "No sense in getting nasty. What the hell's up?" He was attired in clinging silk pajamas. His careful diurnal veneer had vanished. His thin hair stuck up from his head as if greased. His needle-pointed mustache drooped sadly. Unhealthy sacks, the color of graphite, curved under his protruding eyes. Cherry Brown tossed her head, salvaged a cigarette from the litter on the table, struck a match, puffed hungrily, and sat down, legs swinging. Pollux merely stood still. He seemed conscious of the miserable figure he presented and shifted from one foot to the other. Thum appraised him dispassionately, looking from one to the other. No one said a word. The inspector said in the charged silence, "Now suppose you two lovebirds tell me where you were tonight." Cherry sniffed. "Who wants to know? Suppose you tell us why you've suddenly taken an interest in my affairs." Thum thrust his hard, red face close to her. "Now listen, sister," he said without heat. "You and I will get along fine. Fine, see? If you don't act Park Avenue. But get tough and I'll break every bone in that pretty body of yours. Answer me, and cut the society stuff." His eyes were like agates, boring into hers. She giggled a little. "Well, after the show tonight, Pollux met me and we came here." "That's who," he said. Thum. Bruno observed that Pollux was frowning, trying to signal the woman across Thum's shoulders. "You got in around 2:30. Now where were you?" "Well, what are you so steamed about?" "Sure, we came here. I didn't want to say we went right from the theater to the hotel. I mean, I didn't mean to say it. We went to a speakeasy on 45th Street. Then we came here." "You weren't on Weehawken Ferry tonight by any chance, were you? A little before midnight?" Pollux groaned. "You too," snapped Thum. "You were there, and both of you were seen in the ferry landing on the Jersey side." Cherry and Pollux looked at each other in a kind of despair. The woman said slowly, "Well, what of it? Anything wrong in that?" "There's plenty wrong with it," growled the inspector. "Where were you two going?" "Oh, just taking a ferry ride." Thum snorted in disgust. "My God," he said. "Are you just dumb or what? Expect me to believe that?" He stamped one foot. "I'm sick and tired of this beating around the bush, Sarah. You were on that ferry, and you got off on the Jersey side because you were following the DeWitt party." Pollux muttered. "We'd better give it to him straight, Cherry. It's the only way." She glared at him with contempt. "You poor white-livered sissy. There you go, spilling the beans like a scared brat. We didn't do anything wrong, did we? They haven't got anything on us, have they? Then what are you yapping about?" "But Cherry," Pollux was wincing. He spread his hands. Thum let them bicker. For some time, he had been eyeing the pearl-beaded evening bag on the table. Now he plucked the bag to him and hefted it speculatively. The bickering stopped as if by magic. Cherry watched the heavy hand go up and down, it down. "Give me that," she said thickly. "Pretty heavy upholstery in this bag, isn't there?" grinned Thum. "Weighs near a ton, I wonder." She uttered a little animal cry as if his large fingers dexterously flipped the bag open and dipped inside. Pollux paled and took a spasmodic step forward. Bruno quietly left the protection of his wall and went to Thum's side. The inspector's fingers emerged with a diminutive, pearl-handled revolver of small caliber. He manipulated the mechanism of the weapon and examined the interior. 3 chambers were filled. Thum wrapped a handkerchief around a pencil and swabbed the barrel. The handkerchief emerged clean. He held the revolver close to his nose and sniffed. He shook his head and threw the weapon on the table. "I have a permit to own a revolver," said the actress, licking her lips. "Let's see it." She went to the sideboard, opened a drawer, and returned to the table. Thum examined the permit and handed it back to her. She sat down again. "Now you," said Thum to Pollux, "let's have it. You were tailing the duet party." "What for?" I don't know what you're talking about." Thum's eyes strayed to the revolver. "You know this gun makes it look bad for little Cherry here, don't you?" Cherry gulped. "What do you mean?" Pollux's mouth sagged. "John DeWitt was shot and killed on the West Shore local tonight," said District Attorney Bruno for the first time he had spoken since entering the room. "Murdered." Their lips repeated the words mechanically. They looked at each other in a dazed, horrified way. "Who did it?" whispered the woman. "Don't you know?" Cherry Brown's full lips began to quiver. Pollux surprised Thum and Bruno by taking his first decisive step. He leaped to the table before Thum could move and snatched up the revolver. Bruno lunged aside. Thum's hand shot to his hip pocket. The actress screamed, but Pollux was not attempting drama. He held the weapon gingerly by the barrel, and Thum's hand paused at his pocket. "Look," said Pollux quickly. His hand trembled as he shoved the grip toward the inspector. "Take a good look at those bullets inside, Inspector. They're not loaded. They're blanks." Thum took the weapon away. "Blanks they are," he muttered. Bruno observed that Cherry Brown was staring at Pollux as if she had never seen him before. Pollux's words tumbled over each other in his eagerness. "I changed them myself last week. Cherry didn't know until just now. I didn't like the idea of her carrying a loaded gun around. A woman's careless about those things." "Why only 3 cartridges, Pollux?" asked Bruno. "For all we know, there might have been a loaded cartridge in one of the empty chambers." "But I tell you there wasn't," cried Pollux. "I don't know why I didn't fill it up. I just didn't. Maybe bullets are just expensive back then. I don't know. We weren't on that train tonight either. We got as far as the pier, and then we turned around and took the next ferry back to New York, didn't we, Cherry?" She nodded dumbly. Thum rifled the bag again. This time it actually is rifled. "Did you buy tickets?" "No. We didn't even go near the ticket office or the train." "But you were following the DeWitt party." A little nerve in Pollux's left eyelid began to jump comically. The rapidity of its quiver increased, but Pollux snapped his mouth shut like a turtle. The woman lowered her eyes and stared at the rug. Thum went into the dark bedroom. He came out again, empty-handed, and searched the sitting room with ruthless efficiency. No one said anything. Finally, he turned his back on them and clumped heavily to the door. Bruno said, "Be on call at any time. No funny business, either of you," and followed Thum out of the room into the corridor. The waiting man looked expectant at Thum and Bruno as Thum and Bruno emerged. But the inspector shook his head and forged ahead to the elevators, Bruno trailing alone wearily. "You guys ever watch the channel Dr. Disaster?" "Why didn't you just take the revolver?" asked Bruno. Thum jabbed a horny forefinger at the button. "And what good would that do us?" he said grumpily. The hotel detective pressed behind. The worried look on his face was more pronounced than ever. Sergeant Duffy shouldered him aside. "No good at all. Dr. Schilling said the wound was made by a .38. The only gun in that place is a .22. Scene 7, Michael Collins' apartment, Saturday, October 10, 4:45 a.m. New York was unbelievable in the dark glow of the false dawn. The police car rushed unhindered through the streets as black and deserted as mountain trails, unseen except for the occasional cruising cab headlights staring. Michael Collins lived in a fortress on West 78th Street. As the police car slid to the curb, a man detached himself from the shadows of the house. Thum jumped out, followed by Bruno and the detectives, and the man said, "He's still upstairs, Chief. He hasn't been out of the place since he came in." Thum nodded, and they streamed into the lobby. A uniformed old man at a desk gaped. They shook a sleeping elevator boy into wakefulness, and he rushed them upward. On the 8th floor, they got out of the elevator. Another detective appeared and significantly pointed to a door. They gathered round, quiet, and Bruno, with a sigh of excitement, consulted his watch. "Everything covered?" asked Thum. In a matter of fact, he's liable to be rambunctious. He stepped to the door, pressed the bell button. A distant trill came to their ears. Instantly they heard the scuffle of feet, and a man's voice cried hoarsely, "Who's there? Who is it?" Thum bellowed, "Police, open the door." A short silence, then, "You'll never get me alive, damn you," in a strangled shout. Another scuffling of feet. "And why would you announce that? That doesn't seem very smart." Sharp and clear as the snapping of frozen branch, a revolver shot, then the sound of something heavy falling. Oh. Okay, I thought, I suppose I should have focused more on the alive part. Oh, I thought he was like, "You'll never get me alive," and then you ran away. Like, it's like, why would you announce that you're running? Like, oh, it's yeah, that it makes sense that you would announce that, I guess. Well, fuck. They leaped into frenzied action. Thum took one step backward, inhaled deeply, and hurled himself at the door. Maybe they thought he was going to get locked up in debtor's prison. It's like, you owe money for that metal deal that went badly. Now you're going to go to prison for owing money. They leaped into frenzied action. Thum took one step backward, inhaled deeply, and hurled himself at the door. It was solid, formidable. Sergeant Duffy and another man, a hard-muscled individual, stepped back with Thum, and the three men crashed into the door with the impact of a battering ram. It shivered, but held. "Again," yelled the inspector. Under the fourth assault, the door gave with a grinding scream, and they tumbled headlong into a long, dark hallway. At the end of the hall, there was the doorway to a room which was fully illuminated. On the threshold between the hall and the room lay the pajama-clad figure of Michael Collins. Why does everyone wear pajamas? I mean, I own pajamas. I mean, they're okay, but honestly, I prefer to just sleep naked. I also keep the box fan on all times of year. Then I keep my house a bit cooler than most people tend to keep their house. I think, ideally, 64 degrees Fahrenheit is a good temperature. Then again, I am sitting here fully naked reading this book. So, where were we? On the threshold between the hall and the room lay the pajama-clad figure of Michael Collins. By his right hand was a dull black revolver still smoking. Thum scrambled forward, heavy shoes scraping the parquet. He landed on his knees beside Collins with a thud, placed his head to the man's chest. "He's still alive," he shouted. "How did you miss?" "Get him into that room." They lifted the inert figure and carried it into the lighted room, a living room, dumping it on a divan? I don't know what that word means. Collins's face was ghastly. His eyes were closed, his lips drawn back in a wolfish snarl, and he was breathing in huge, gulping pants. Along the right side of his head was nothing but matted hair, and dripping blood was visible. The whole side of his face was dyed red, and the blood had splattered down to his right shoulder, soaking and spreading into the pajama cloth. Thum's fingers touched the wound and were instantly crimson. "Didn't even penetrate his thick skull," he growled. "Just plowed alongside his head." Apparently no one has a proper gun in this era. Fainted from the shock, I guess. Lousy aim. Get a doctor, somebody. Well, Bruno, it looks like the end. A man ran out. Thum crossed the room in 3 strides and picked up the weapon. It's a .38, all right. I mean, it's probably a pretty popular weapon. I don't know why, though. Apparently, it doesn't really work very well. Unless we're just going to blame Collins entirely for this. He said with satisfaction. Then his face fell. Oh, only 1 shot fired, though. The one he tried to kill himself with. Wonder where the bullet went. Right in this wall, volunteered a detective. He pointed to a spot on a wall which the plaster had splattered. As Thum probed for the bullet, Bruno said he ran toward the living room from the hall. Fired as he ran. The bullet went clean across the room. He fell on the threshold when he missed. Thum, so he hurt his head on the ground? Thum scowled at the flattened leaden pellet in his fingers. He put it into his pocket, wrapped the revolver carefully in his handkerchief, and handed it to the detective. There was a hubbub up in the 8th floor corridor. They turned to find a small mob of scantily clad people staring fearfully into the apartment. 2 men went out in the melee that ensued. The detective, who had been commissioned to summon a physician, shoved his way through the crowd, followed by a distinguished-looking man dressed in pajamas and robe, carrying a black bag. "You a doctor?" demanded Thum. "Yes, I live in this house. What seems to be trouble?" He did not catch sight of the still figure on the dive-in until the detective stood aside. Without another word, the physician dropped to his knees. "Water," he said after a moment, his fingers flying. "Warm." A man went into the bathroom, returned with a pan full of steaming water. 5 minutes of deft ministration, and the physician rose. "Just a bad scratch," he said. "He'll come to in a moment." He had swabbed the wound, sterilized, and shaved the entire right side of the head. Wow. With perfect unconcern, after a second cleansing, he sewed the lips of the wound together and bandaged the head. "He'll need further attention soon, but this will do temporarily. He'll have an ugly headache and a good deal of pain. He's coming to now." A hoarse, hollow groan, and Collins shuddered. His eyes rolled open, filled incredibly with tears as intelligence slowly crept into them. "He'll be all right," said the physician indifferently, closing his bag. The physician left. The detective grasped Collins' armpits and hauled him to a semi-sitting position, stuffing a pillow under his neck. Collins groaned again, and one bloodless hand strayed to his head, felt the bandage, dropped helplessly to the divan. "Collins," began the inspector, sitting down beside the wounded man, "why did you try to commit suicide?" Collins moistened his lips with a dry tongue. He was fearful, grotesque object. The water, the right side of his face, a smear of dried blood. "Water," he mumbled. Thum glanced up, and the detective brought a glass of water, holding Collins's head gingerly while the Irishman gulped and sniveled over the cool liquid. "Well, Collins?" Collins panted. "You've got me, haven't you? You've got me, haven't you? I'm ruined anyway." "Then you admit it?" Collins began to say something, stopped, nodded, looked startled, and raised his eyes suddenly with something of his old ferocity. "Admit what?" Thum laughed shortly. "None of that now, Collins. Don't play the innocent victim. You know damned well you killed John DeWitt, that's what." "I killed?" Collins began blankly, then his body writhed as he strove to sit up. He sank back under the pressure of Thum's hand on his chest, crying wildly. "What the hell are you talking about? I killed DeWitt? Who killed him? I didn't even know he was dead. Are you crazy? Or is this a frame-up?" Thum looked puzzled. Bruno stirred, and Colin's eyes rolled toward him. Bruno said soothingly, "Now look here, evasion won't do you a bit of good, Colin. When you heard it was the police coming after you, yelled, 'You'll never get me alive,' and attempted to kill yourself. Is that the last speech of an innocent man? A moment ago you said, 'You've got me, haven't you?' Isn't that an admission of guilt? It won't help you to lie. You've acted like a guilty man. But I didn't kill DeWitt, I tell you. Then why did you seem to expect the arrival of police? Why did you try to commit suicide?" Thum demanded harshly. "Because," Collins caught his underlip between his strong teeth and peered at Bruno. "That's my business," he said in a sullen voice. "I don't know anything about a killing. The last time I saw DeWitt, he was very much alive." He groaned as a spasm of pain flicked across his heavy features. He put his head between his hands. "Then you admit seeing DeWitt tonight?" "Sure, I saw him. Plenty of witnesses to that." "I saw him on the train tonight. Is that where he was killed?" "Stop stalling," said Thum. "How'd you happen to be on the Newburgh local?" "I followed DeWitt. I admit it. Followed him all evening. When he and the rest of his bunch left the Ritz, I trailed him to the station. I've been trying to see him for a long time. when he was behind bars. I bought a ticket and got on the same train. As soon as it started, I went up to DeWitt. He was sitting with his lawyer Brooks and 2 other men. Ahern was one of them, and I pleaded with him. Sure, we know all that, said the inspector. What happened after you left the car and went out on the platform? Collins's bloodshot eyes were staring. I asked him to make good Longstreet's bum tip on the market. Longstreet had put the skids under me. It was DeWitt's firm, and he was responsible. I needed that dough. DeWitt wouldn't listen. He just said no, that he was, oh hell, he was hard as nails. Choke rage crept up as I almost got down on my knees to him, but it was no-go. Where were you standing at this time? We'd crossed over to the other platform, the dark car. So then I decided to get off the train. I was through. We were pulling into a place called Ridgefield Park. The train stopped. I opened the door on the tracks side and jumped down. Then I reached up and closed the door again and crossed the tracks. I found that there was no train for the rest of the night going back to the city, so I hunted up a cab and came right back here, so help me God. He sank back on the pillow, breathing heavily. Was DeWitt still on the back platform when you jumped out? Demanded of him. Yes. He watched me, damn his soul. Collins bit his lip.